If you're a man, you know being a man comes with problems. And those problems are wives and girlfriends. And wives and girlfriends come with shoes. And shoes come with problems. Oh, these are too hard to walk on. It's hurting my feet. But dear, you paid $400 for these shoes. But they're hard. I want to walk on a cushion of clouds. Well, you can't put clouds in their shoes, but you can do the next best thing. Let them walk on sheep. The best shoe inserts are sheep. These are sheepskin wool inserts from New Zealand. These are wool, also from New Zealand. These are available at www.thesheepskinfactory.co.nz. These are UGG sheepskin insoles from New Zealand. Now, the problem with the UGGs is they come with foam attached and they're too big. So they become so big in the shoes, it's like walking on high heels, virtually. So they're too big. It's an option if you have enough, if you want to put them in boots or something. So this is a nice soft option. It's like a quilted wool, 100% wool. Do not bleach, do not dry clean, do not do anything with it. Again, it's not going to fit in the shoe. And if you try to put this in the shoe, it's going to bunch up and no woman is going to want to walk on that. So you have to cut it to size. How do you cut it to size? You might be able to trim this one with a good pair of scissors, and I mean like commercial scissors and not little baby scissors. First, you're going to need the shape of the shoe. And to do that, we would take the inside of the shoe out. In this case, we already had insoles cut. So we can take that out, put it on a piece of paper. Normally, you can pull the bottom of the shoe out. If you can't, you're going to have to estimate it and then cut it, fit it in, and play with it and make it. But all you really need to do is trace the insole. This is just a piece of heavy paper. You can use regular paper. It's a little bit better. Take a pair of scissors and just cut along the lines like they taught you in school. One of the nice things about feet is they're symmetrical. So all you have to do is cut one out and flip it over, and it'll do both sides. Of course, make sure you do both sides, because if you cut them both the same, you're going to have two left feet. And nobody wants to have two left feet. So when you cut it out, you want to check it in one of the shoes and make sure that it fits. Most likely, it'll be a little tight. This one's a little big, so you'll have to trim it a little bit. Remember, you traced on the outside of it, so you may have to cut a little bit off. Get it right where you want it, get it fitting in there, and that looks pretty good. It's flat all the way around. Put your hands in there, and it works. Fills out the whole shoe. Now we want to trim our sheep. As you can see, the sheepskin is a whole lot bigger than the shoe, and it's not the same shape. So you're not going to be able to use these pieces unless you cut them. So get your piece lined up, and we're going to take a magic marker. Now this is on the outside of the paper, so we need to cut on the inside of that line. So we don't want to see black magic marker on our finished product. So that's what we have to cut. And then on the other piece, we just flip this piece over and we'll do the same thing. If you're using cheap scissors like this, they're not going to cut it. Leather is typically cut with blades, but you can't really cut this that straight because it's floppy and you need a clean cut. So what I like to do is I take a piece of metal and then I compress it down where you can actually push the blade, and I have a cutting board here, push the blade into it, and look at how nicely that cuts. So we get a very clean line here. The more you can compress that down, the more pressure you can put on it, the cleaner that's going to cut. You can use something like a ruler, but you would use it this way. So you could do it like that. That's a little bit harder because you really have to push on it, so you probably need 2 people to hold it down. Any kind of metal that you can use. If you're doing corners, you could even use a glass, or even you could use your beer and cut around that, although that's not flat on the bottom. But if you were to use a glass and push it down on there, you could cut around the glass and get those corners. Let me cut the rest of this and show you how. You want to keep as much of that sheepskin, that sheep fur, as possible. And if you're not getting enough compression on it, again, you might have to put some extra weight into it, because where I was cutting, I usually like to use something a little bit longer and compress it so that it's compressed over a longer span. And if you have a cat, I'm sure they're going to love this stuff. If you have a big pair of scissors, you should be able to trim just around the edges there. So you can definitely clean it up with some scissors. Trying to cut it, unfortunately, because of the thickness of it, when you're trying to cut it, it's hard to get straight lines. If we compare this piece now, piece we did, it should be pretty close. This is my right shoe. Now, your wife or girlfriend is going to be walking on sheep. So these are pretty thick. This is pretty cloudy. I don't know if it's going to work in a shoe this small. It'll definitely work in boots or something bigger or oversized. But there are also these from the same company. And these are just quilted soft wool. And these, I don't think these are going to cut. They might cut with scissors. It's going to hurt your hands, but let's try to cut it with scissors. So we'll do the same thing. We'll take this, and really, if you can use some of the edges that are already cut, so you don't have to cut as much, it'll help you. Go ahead and use a Sharpie, crayon, chalk, whatever you have. Again, we're on the outside, so we want to cut away all the black. Trying to cut this way won't cut. You can crush it down onto a cutting board and cut it, and you can get pretty clean lines. So that's going to allow you to get super clean lines with that. If you have a big pair of commercial scissors, that will also work because they're made for cutting very heavy fabric. Probably cut this with smaller scissors, but your hand is going to feel like you just survived the war. So you can cut those down pretty easily, and that'll go in there and give them a nice cushion to walk on. That was super easy. I guess it doesn't, I guess they're universal. So I'm thinking left and right if you have 2 left feet. This one, you can't make a mistake because you can flip it over. On these, if you have to have left and right. So these are left and right. They're not the same. They're actually, they go back to back. These are the same because they can be flipped over. So I'm going to, once again, trace it with my marker. And I've marked up my hand. If you accidentally write on your hand, don't cut on those lines. Small pair of scissors, it is really going to leave indentations in my hand. It will work, but these will not cut. They will not cut the sheepskin, the bigger ones. So if you don't have a really good pair of heavy scissors, I suggest using a razor blade, holding it down and cutting the lines. And that fits in nicely. That's a nice wool insert. It's nice and warm for the winter. It's literally walking on sheep. So these are the UGG brand. Ugg brand comes with foam. I'm sure it's softer, but it's so thick. This is thick inside a small shoe. Inside a boot, this would be fine, probably be more comfortable, but you're probably not going to fit that into most shoes. So in this size shoe, I'm going to recommend the thin ones. In something like a boot or a heavier shoe or something that has more room, you can use these. I'm going to go ahead and cut the other side. Again, left and right. Since they come in pairs, you shouldn't really be able to make a mistake. And we have a nice tracing on there. So if we try to cut these with this, unfortunately, what happens is you get like an angle here. So you can cut them with big scissors, but you're not cutting the fur. Actually cuts pretty good. So if you can get yourself a big pair of scissors, they're probably $50 or $100. If you don't have a $100 pair of scissors, and you do the next best thing, which is just compressing it down as much as you can, taking a razor blade, and you can get a nice clean cut. If you don't have something to hold it down, then it's going to be jagged, you're going to be fighting it. I mean, potentially you could cut it slowly, but you can see how nicely that cuts along your straight edge. Yep, I definitely like commercial scissors better. So there you go. Sheep inserts for women's shoes, custom cut. Your shoe problems are over. I thought the razor blade would be the answer, but the commercial scissors seem to work much better, but they're probably about $100, which isn't cheap. Then again, the inserts aren't cheap, but all of it is really cheap compared to the shoes. I'm gonna sneeze from this stuff, right?
Yeah, get that thing away from me.
Get it away. You'll be sneezing, I won't be able to record anything.